Flora is a poem about young African ladies in the city and city life in general. It's a poem about modern women who have abandoned the dignified and honest way of life, that which was typically the African woman's life. This is symbolic of such women who have embraced modernity from the negative perspective. The speaker had met Flora in a public nightclub, and she had admired his dancing steps and fallen in love with him immediately. The lady is also attracted by his tight-fitting trousers, which was fashionable in the past. He is also attracted by Flora, who is very beautiful in her multicolored dress and her curled hair. She concludes immediately that she has found the man of her dreams. This is love at first sight. Unfortunately, the love is short-lived. A few days later, she abandons him and falls in love with an athlete because of his muscular chest and arms, and swears to love him till death. Only a few days later, she abandons him. He is very handsome, and he looks like an angel whom Flora abandons, advising him to continue with life, and shatters the young boy's sporting career and destroys him emotionally. She later falls in love with a guitarist in a club. In a rush, she falls in love again with a rebellious graduate, and she swears to spend the rest of her life with him. Unfortunately, she abandons him too after getting information that he had been expelled from school. She has concluded on him being a failure in life, and she abandons him to misery and frustration as he becomes a shadow of himself. The speaker now hears that Flora has now fallen in love with a minister. She thinks he is a responsible man with a bright future, full of assets, full of property. Unfortunately, he fails to win the next election. And ironically, he is not well educated. He cannot be employed anywhere else, and the bright future vanishes. In rhetoric, the speaker wants to know why Flora has derailed so many men. Excuse me. He regrets that she would have used her wisdom, but she followed the path of foolishness, and now it is too late. Flora sees the future spread in front of her like a field, where she changes from one man to another in the name of love. Life will become difficult, and she will live miserably because she played with people's hearts and left them in misery. Fortunately, she will spend the rest of her life in loneliness. She must face the consequences of her action because of pretense in her dealings with the men with whom she pretended to fall in love with, but whose life she has destroyed. The poem castigates modern women who are very choosy and they play around with men's hearts. Love has become a game where they find amusement, and the characteristics that determine one's love choices are all ignored. Such women cause pain and misery in the hearts of men. Nevertheless, the poem wants that such women should lose it all, and their end should be very miserable, frustrating, and emotionally empty. The poem is a satire on moral indecency, especially when Flora spends more of her time in nightclubs. It is also about promiscuity and infidelity in love. Do not forget that in her relationship with this man, she forces this men to commit infidelity against their wives. It is also about promiscuity and infidelity in love. Above all, this group of women are motivated by nothing else but materialism and their quest to acquire material things and have material gratification. Their actions also have negative consequences on those they come across because they leave them emotionally destroyed, they leave them in pains, they leave them in frustration, and they are shattered emotionally. Nevertheless, Angira glorifies the beauty of the African woman seen through Flora, who is beautiful, has curly hair, and has ivory on her wrist. Flora symbolizes greenness and freshness of the young African girls, as it is derived from the word flora, which means plants. Unfortunately, many of them are not patient enough to let their beauty blossom to maturity and attract a responsible man for marriage. Many give out their bodies in exchange for material wealth only to end up in frustration and misery when they are dumped. The poet warns that girls who use their bodies to make money and feign love to men never succeed in life. They end up frustrated in their disgustful living spaces, ruminating about all the men that they had dated, and none had settled down with them in their old age. The poet also warns about love at first sight, as he points out the different things that had prompted Flora to fall in love with the different men. The tight-fitting trousers, the muscular chest, the angelic voice, the university student. The most hilarious is the unsuspected illiteracy of the politician who has no significant qualification. The fact that the politician is an illiterate highlights corruption in African politics. Many graduates are jobless, yet an illiterate occupies such an enviable position in the country. The image of the metropolis is also evoked through all its appeal, its sensuality, its glamour, through the nightclubs and the women who are ready to sell their bodies to men for satisfaction. Nevertheless, such life has its appeal, and it also has consequences.